Welcome to my channel people. Author link will be on description, make sure to check it out. Staring at the sage that was baring its fang at him, Bakurio remained unmoved, meeting an immortal huh. Well, I guess I would run for my life if that day ever comes. The sage's yellow eyes flickered slightly as he asked again, with his pressure increasing even further, why is that? Bakurio yawned slightly, completely uncaring for the increasing pressure, and said, how could you keep your sanity for that long of a time? Boredom and emptiness are a dangerous poison, and the longer you live, the longer they would eat you from the inside. And I don't want to imagine meeting someone like that. The black tortoise sage closed his eyes and remained silent for a while and said, you pass the trial, you shall start learning sag. However, before the sage could finish, Bakurio's eyes suddenly transformed into that of his Mangekyo Sharingan and he stared at him coldly. But if that immortal tries to threaten me just like you are doing right now, I don't mind erasing him from existence. A terrifying killing intent gushed out from Bakurio, and a huge shadowy humanoid figure wearing a dark robe emerged above him and matched the black tortoise sage in size, although it only appeared to be an upper half. In its hand, it held a scythe that reeked of the aura of death as its eyes shined from under its hood with an eerie light that threatened to swallow the soul of anyone that stared directly at them. What are you doing? Asked Otahime, alarmed by the sudden turn of events, but Bakurio completely ignored her as the shadowy figure behind him immediately raised the scythe with both hands, and they can even feel a chilling smile on its face as it slashed horizontally at the black tortoise sage. Stop! Yelled Otahime before she jumped in front of the attack to block it, but the black tortoise sage was faster to react than her as a few pieces of his dark shell ignited with nature's chakra, causing them to enlarge and shine with a dark light as they blocked Bakurio's attack, creating a terrifying shockwave. However, the result wasn't as Otahime expected. The scythe easily cut through the sage's almost impenetrable defense and was soon about to connect with her and split her in half as well. Am I going to die? She thought, but at that time, the sage's yellow eyes ignited slightly, causing time to come to a standstill. Then he easily grabbed Otahime from harm's way before time moved on once more and Bakurio's slash passed through Otohime's previous location. Seeing this, Bakurio's eyes flashed slightly. There's no denying it, this sage has a certain mastery over controlling time, even if it's only on a small range. He's dangerous, thought Bakurio, who felt a weird fluctuation in the air before Otahime vanished and reappeared beside the black tortoise sage. It seems like I will have to get even more serious, said Bakurio with a grin while staring at the sage right in the eyes and failing multiple times to put him under a genjutsu. He felt as if they were separated by a weird veil. What do you think you are doing? How dare you attack the sage? Yelled Otahime, and Bakurio felt many presences approaching the palace, quickly creating some tremors from their huge sizes. Enough, Otahime. Young man, I apologize, but the test was necessary. Hearing this, Bakurio's killing intent finally retreated. And here I thought I would be forced to test out my level 100 Susanoo, thought Bakurio in disappointment, but he quickly regained his composure and said with a smile as if he wasn't trying to kill them a second ago, so, when can I begin learning sage arts? Otahime was about to refuse, but the black tortoise sage held her back and said, you can start right away after passing the trial of the eternal chamber. Okay, said Bakurio as he watched the sage communicate something with Otahime, who then led him reluctantly through the palace towards the eternal chamber. Meanwhile, after Bakurio had left, the black tortoise sage suddenly muttered, what do you think, old friend? Suddenly, out of nowhere, the space near the black tortoise sage rippled slightly, and from it came out a huge muscular monkey that was wearing a gold and orange armor and holding a silver staff with red ends behind his back. This was the wisdom sage, the ancestor of the stone monkey tribe that Enma is currently ruling over. And right now, this sage had a calm look in his eyes as he said, we've been waiting for this darkness for a long time. That kid is only a catalyst and hastened the fated fight. You don't have to antagonize him too much. Surprisingly, even Bakurio didn't detect this sage's presence. I know, I was just testing him to see if he would truly dare react the way I saw in my vision. Unfortunately, this means that he's going to fail as well against that darkness. The wisdom sage shook his head. It doesn't matter if he fails or not. He's an anomaly. He wasn't in our calculations in the first place, so his success or failure are irrelevant to us. The black tortoise sage nodded its head slightly before it said, we need to hasten our preparations, and the wisdom sage nodded his head before disappearing again without a trace, just like he appeared in the first place. How disappointing, echoed the ancient voice in the lonely room. Meanwhile, Bakurio, who was following after Otahime, didn't know that the sage thought of him as a lost cause and that his future appeared grim and there was no saving him. We have arrived. From here on out, it's all up to you, said Otahime with a slightly irritated voice after leading Bakurio all the way to the entrance of the Eternal Chamber and explained to him about the test. So, this is it, huh? Thought Bakurio before he asked, does this place have chakra inside of it? Otahime was reluctant to reply to him, but she did it anyway as it was her duty. No. This is an empty dimension where time moves slower compared to the outside world. The only thing you will find in there is the food and water we will provide you with once a month so that you can survive. I see. Too bad I can't train chakra-related things inside, muttered Bakurio before he stepped into the chamber, leaving Otahime alone in the corridor. Hopefully he will fail. This test can only be over if the person's heart can overcome their loneliness and the emptiness and find peace within themselves, she muttered before she took her leave to prepare provisions for Bakurio. Inside the dimension, Bakurio found himself in an empty cube-like room that was completely white, and after the door closed behind him, it completely disappeared as if it never existed before. It seems I'm stuck now, muttered Bakurio, who was staring all around him as he sat on the ground and began contemplating what to do. Can I really find peace within myself and overcome my emptiness? Even in my previous life, I didn't succeed in doing it. And in this life, I at most was able to fill in some of the huge void inside my heart, but I never was able to deal with it. Bakurio contemplated for days on what to do, but no solution came to mind, so he ended up deciding to find something to do to fill in his time. Since using chakra wasn't possible because he couldn't refill it inside this dimension, he decided to turn his attention towards learning about medicine, seals, and curses. He had countless books in his inventory after using some points to expand it, not to mention that there's also the option to put books of the same category in the same slot, but he can't put more than 100 books. This went on for a whole year until he finished all the books in his inventory and ended up feeling bored again. What should I do now? He thought and felt like this was probably going to be one of his toughest tests, and he might even not be able to solve it just like in his past life. After Bakurio completely studied everything that he had in his inventory and reached level 100 mastery in medical arts and seals, he turned his attention to his other masteries and trained his swordsmanship and throwing art to level 100 as well, helping him complete many quests. His medical arts mastery reaching level 75 and 100 respectively granted him the skill restoration and the ability body control respectively. Restoration was a skill that upon casting would regenerate the health of the target, be it user or someone else, by 2000, and another 2000 would follow over a period of 10 seconds. Meanwhile, the ability body control allowed him to have certain control over every inch of his body, and with it he could even shift the position of his organs easily, which could be very helpful in fights. As for his sealing arts reaching level 50, 75 and 100, they granted him Protection Talisman, Low Cage X10, Explosive Talisman, Medium Cage X10, and a Fuinjutsu called Instant Bind. The first two rewards were self-explanatory, but the last one was actually a Fuinjutsu that could be insta-cast just like Minato's Flying Thunder God Jutsu, and it allows the user to instantly bind his target. Although, the strength of this binding is related to the user's strength. However, as much as these skills were amazing, Bakurio was still most impressed by what he gained from his throwing art and swordsmanship reaching level 100. He gained a skill called Undodgeable Throw, which once activated guarantees that anything he throws will hit its mark no matter the obstacles in front of it, which was terrifying to think about if paired with his Dark Rain Jutsu that multiplied anything he throws. As for his best reward so far, it was an item name, Sword of Doom, Legendary Type, Weapon. Level 100. Weight 3 kg. Description: a sword that was said to bring disaster to both the wielder and his enemies, for its sole purpose is to bring doom. Function 1. Plus 300% to damage when wielding a sword. Function 2. Skill: Doom Slash. Function 3. Skill: the end of the path. Requirements: none. Bakurio's eyes opened wide the moment he laid his eyes on this beautiful sword. It was completely black with a red line running through it, a testament to its desire for blood and destruction. As for its abilities, Doom Slash was an AoE attack that dealt 500% of the damage in the form of a fan-like slash, and it had a cooldown of 30 seconds. Meanwhile, the skill the end of the path allowed the user to surpass his limits, granting them 100% increase to their attributes, but in exchange consumes 10% of their HP every second. A true double-edged sword. After Bakurio received these rewards, he didn't find anything else to do and a sense of emptiness overwhelmed him and threatened to swallow him whole. But he wasn't sure on what to do to overcome it. This negativity kept accumulating more and more, so Bakurio decided to try to spend his time completing some of his advancement quests, which he had plenty of but were close to impossible, just like the trial of this eternal chamber, and he chose to start with his close combat advancement quest. He was required to fight an opponent that was 10 times stronger than him and 3 times faster without relying on anything other than his close combat mastery. In fact, all of his attributes would be reset as well, turning him into a completely normal human. "I'd rather go through such an impossible fight rather than wait here like this," thought Bakurio as he clicked through the system for the mission to start, and he immediately felt as if his consciousness left his body and entered a different dimension. Although for an outsider, Bakurio was still sitting in a meditative position inside the Eternal Chamber. "This place appears exactly the same as the Eternal Chamber," muttered Bakurio as he watched a dark fog accumulate in front of him and transform into the shape of a huge muscular man. It looked completely human if not for its lifeless eyes. Bakurio watched that figure silently before he turned his attention to his body. "I feel weak, and I can't use any of my abilities. This is annoying," he thought, feeling disgusted by the weakness he was experiencing, as if his body was emptied out, which reminded him more and more of his heart's emptiness, so he turned his attention to his opponent that was standing still. "It seems I have to attack you first, so be it," said Bakurio before he rushed at his opponent and sent a fist right to its stomach, but the muscular man easily dodged it, showing a terrifying level of agility that didn't match its size. Bakurio kept attacking consecutively, chaining his attacks perfectly, yet everything was dodged by the muscular man before he sent Bakurio flying with a kick that made Bakurio feel as if he was about to throw up his innards. Ughh, Bakurio held into his stomach as he winced in pain. "I can't touch him, he's too fast, and without using any abilities, how am I supposed to win this kind of fight? There's a limit to how much mastery can help in a fight when there's an overwhelming disparity in strength and speed." Bakurio felt depressed seeing that the situation was completely helpless, just like the trial of the Eternal Chamber, and he was seriously considering using his save and load ability and find another way to go about learning the Tortoise's sage art, but he forced himself to calm down and sat down to contemplate what to do. "Although I lost all my abilities, I didn't lose my talents. My body talent, taijutsu talent, and even hunter talent are all directed towards using the body. I can't keep wasting them like this," thought Bakurio before he closed his eyes and entered a meditative state despite him not using any skill to assist him. After calming down completely, he resumed his fight with the muscular man. Days passed, yet he achieved no results until a whole month passed when he saw his first progress. He landed a hit on the man, but right after, he received a beating of his life and was summoned out of the dimension and into his true body, something that happened a lot during this month. After 2 months, he landed 3 hits on the man before getting beaten beyond recognition. After 6 months, he lasted for 1 whole minute before losing. This was his biggest progress so far. As for how he achieved this, he actually stopped attacking altogether, and just like a game of chess, he began learning the attack patterns of the muscular man and calculating all the possibilities that could happen in their fight. Indeed, this whole time his close combat mastery was based on himself and how he should fight, but now he put his focus on his opponent. It took him a few months because the man kept changing his attack patterns regularly every time Bakurio got used to them, but after a certain time, Bakurio's mind and body entered a weird state, or an instinct should it be called. A state where he can instantly react and read the movement of the muscular man from the smallest hints of movement in his body and automatically react accordingly. But even after all of this, Bakurio was still not able to defeat the man and could only last for a minute after 6 months of being beaten. However, he soon hit the 1-year mark and things became completely different. "Today is your last day, buddy," said Bakurio to the completely motionless muscular man before he approached him calmly while tying his long hair into a ponytail so it doesn't bother him. And when he was only 1 meter away from the man, he suddenly punched Bakurio in the face with a terrifying speed. Yet it missed as Bakuryo's head began moving right before the punch was sent and easily dodged the punch as well as the 10 next punches and kicks the muscular man sent his way. Then, he picked the right moment and he counterattacked right away with a punch to the man's stomach after getting out of position from throwing a punch. The muscular man reacted fast enough and blocked with his other hand and wanted to grab Bakuryo's hand. However, Bakuryo smirked slightly since this was only a feint and his attack immediately turned into an uppercut that landed on the muscular man's jaw and sent him stumbling back with bleeding lips. This was where the test was quite fair. The muscular man's durability was only that of a normal human despite his fearsome strength. "We are just starting," said Bakuryo as he rushed back at the man and began exchanging punches with him again, yet he was always 3 steps ahead of him. Indeed, this was what Bakuryo ended up unlocking, something akin to a future sight coupled with perfect control over his body and a terrifying fighting mastery. And after a whole minute of fighting, he finally overcome the impossible test with pure skills alone as the muscular man fell down to the floor defeated and a notification appeared in front of the tired Bakuryo. "Congratulations, you have completed the quest. Reward Close Combat Mastery Level 100, True Fighter Mastery Level 1. Congratulations, you unlocked the skill Future Sight." The first thing Bakuryo did after he finished the grueling quest wasn't to check the system's notifications but instead he slumped on the floor with his hands raised and he kept staring at them. "I actually did it. I did the impossible," muttered Bakuryo, although in a form of a question since he was still finding this experience unbelievable as he recalled just how many times he kept failing over and over again until he found his first success in the form of landing one punch. After recalling all of his experiences during this quest, Bakuryo clenched his fists tightly before he released them and stood up to check the notifications. "True Fighter Mastery, huh? Let's see what this is all about," thought Bakuryo before he checked on the description of this new mastery. "True Fighter Mastery Level 1. Only the true masters that reached the peak of martial arts and fought countless battles could unlock such a mastery. The host gains the ability to manipulate their willpower and manifests it in a formless form that covers their body like an armor and enhances their capabilities. Plus 10% to strength, speed, and defense. Incredible, this is the first mastery that directly increases my stats, and it seems like I was using this instinctively, which is why I was able to deal with the muscular man and the difference in our strength and speed," thought Bakuryo, delighted by such a reward that was worth the effort. Although he knew that leveling up an evolved skill is no easy task. In fact, from what he felt from his evolved Jikaninki, it's at least 50 times harder to level an ability after the evolution, but he could go back in time so time wasn't a problem for him if he so wished. After he finished checking out his new mastery, he turned his attention to the other ability he gained. Future Sight Level 30, once activated, allows the user to predict the movement of an opponent for up to 3 seconds into the future, a simple description, but the effect was terrifying. In a fight where even a split second matters and can make the difference, being capable of reading the movement of an opponent for 3 whole seconds matters a lot. And could easily make a difference when the difference in strength is huge, just like how it was with the trial from his quest. With this, my strength has evolved to a whole new level. Although I wonder if there was another way for me to pass that quest. It doesn't matter anymore, muttered Bakuryo before he turned his attention to what other quests he had. Most advancement quests required him to find specific items or have chakra-related tasks, so he couldn't do them for now and had to focus on those that were similar to his close combat quest. Surprisingly, there are only 2 more quests that I can do right now and they are related to my Sharingan. Let's start with the quest for the Eye of Hypnotism, muttered Bakuryo. After reaching level 100 in his Eyes of Hypnotism, he received a quest that required him to face the strongest genjutsu from this world and somehow find a way out of it without relying on any of his abilities that might help him, such as reinforced heart or the natural resistance of his eyes. So, after Bakuryo prepared himself mentally, he accepted the quest, and instantly a silhouette of a pale woman with 2 white eyes appeared in front of him and it took Bakuryo by surprise. This is. However, before he could contemplate what was happening further, a slit in the woman's forehead opened slightly, revealing a red eye with many tomo in it. It was the terrifying Rinne Sharingan. Frozen in place, Bakuryo suddenly found himself in the same white eternal chamber and completely forgot about that illusion. In no time, he found a way out of the chamber and learned sage arts from the Black Tortoise Sage, and before long, He did the same with the sage arts from the dog and the monkey, which made him successfully collect all the sage arts and in turn, succeed in merging them and become a perfect sage, gaining immense power. And that wasn't all, since just a few years after, Orochimaru succeeded in his experiments and he was able to merge Bakurio's blood with Hashirama's, allowing him to gain immense chakra reserves that made him invincible. And then, he was able to commence his plan to destroy the dark seeds from the whole world and face the one that created them in the first place and defeated him as well, making the world a peaceful place and become a hero beloved by many. This was the effect of Mugen Tsukuyomi, Infinite Dream, a terrifying genjutsu that could only be cast by the Rinne Sharingan. It puts the target inside the dream where everything goes perfectly for them the way they imagined it, but they will never realize that everything was a lie and will remain stuck inside a mere dream forever. This was the fate of the current Bakurio, who was inside the dream. With his outside body incapable of relying on any of its abilities, he was slowly drowning in the illusion until he lost complete touch with reality and believed what he was experiencing to be the truth. However, he soon achieved everything he ever wanted inside that dream world, and his savior finally arrived, the same thing that tormented him for both lives, an emptiness that could never be erased or forgotten no matter what. Slowly, it engulfed his heart, and the eyes of the Bakurio inside the dream suddenly sobered up slightly as he put his hand over his heart and muttered, "This feeling, why does it feel familiar? This emptiness, why is it here when I have everything I need in life?" Doubts emerged inside his heart, and the emptiness used it to create its own nest as it grew bigger and bigger day by day. Bakurio walked throughout the lands of ninjas, searching for an answer, yet he found none. So he returned to the only place where he thought he got rid of this emptiness in the first place, the Eternal Chamber. "Our hero, welcome again to our Dragon Palace," said Odahime with a delighted look on her face, but Bakurio completely ignored her with a dark look on his face as he went directly to the Eternal Chamber. "How come I didn't lose my emptiness? If I didn't lose it, then how did I pass the trail?" thought Bakurio as he entered the Eternal Chamber and closed the door behind him. He spent a week inside the chamber before the door suddenly appeared in front of him, yet the emptiness was still there and he found it weird, so he went to the Black Tortoise Sage and questioned him. "Young hero, what do you seek?" asked the ancient voice, but Bakurio was having none of it as he immediately appeared in front of the sage and tied him with his now evolved Yomi no Kuni, in the dream, easily. "I seek answers, you don't need to speak," said Bakurio, and Odahime yelled, "Our hero. What are you doing?" However, a chain went directly through her head and immediately erased her from existence before Bakurio activated his Mangekyo Sharingan to its full ability and began reading all the knowledge the sage had regarding the Eternal Chamber. And he found that just as he suspected. At first he was told that no one could leave the chamber until they passed the trial, but now there was a change in the information saying that only the first time was hard to pass and further attempts could be passed easily since the chamber remembers the individuals. "Remember us, huh?" Bakurio grinned before he activated his save and load ability and returned to a save point before he entered the room in the first place. "Let's see if you remember me now," he thought as he went to the Dragon Palace again. As Bakurio was going through Tsukuyomi, the face of his true body kept struggling as if it was fighting a nightmare and trying to open his eyes to reality, but no matter how much he tried, he simply couldn't wake up. Meanwhile, inside the illusion, he finally arrived at the Dragon Palace and talked to the Black Tortoise Sage before Odahime led him to the Eternal Chamber without any trouble, and just as before. Not long after entering the Eternal Chamber, he easily succeeded in leaving it again despite the strong feeling of emptiness in his heart that didn't disappear. "As I suspected, something's wrong with me," muttered Bakurio as Odahime approached him with a smile. "What's wrong, Bakurio-sama? You should be proud of yourself. This is the fastest anyone escaped from the Eternal Chamber." Bakurio completely ignored her and went back to the timeline where he had his strongest power. "I'm probably inside a genjutsu, but for something to trap me like this, it's either Shisui's Koto Amatsukami or Tsukuyomi. Nothing else could trick me to such a degree, and this genjutsu appears to try to make me achieve anything I want to satisfy me, so it's probably Tsukuyomi," muttered Bakurio with a thoughtful look on his face before he sat down in a meditative state and used all of his power to wake himself up. "Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!" He kept yelling, his voice reverberating throughout Konoha, startling many people as he used all of his terrifying chakra in a destructive manner, destroying the landscape around him, but it was to no avail. So he resorted to using his evolved eyes to their absolute limit until they went blind, but he finally succeeded and made a crack into the world's reality, and that crack slowly extended to cover the whole world until it crumbled over itself and he opened his eyes suddenly. Bakurio kept breathing heavily as a notification appeared in front of him. Congratulations host, your ability has evolved. Eye of Hypnotism level 100. Eye of Mystery level 1. Bakurio's eyes were ignited by an illusory flame for a while before it disappeared, although he didn't feel any pain from it. Thank God my plan worked and my emptiness eventually kicked in again inside that dream world and allowed me to discover some discrepancies, and I never expected even my save and load ability would be useless there. What a dangerous genjutsu, thought Bakurio as he put his hand over his heart. He never expected he would feel grateful for his emptiness. Of course, he was a very calculative person, and he had another way out, and that was death. Death of his real body, since he wasn't an immortal, which would free him from the illusion, and afterward, he would revive thanks to his rise from the ashes ability. Let's see if you are worth the trouble, thought Bakurio as he checked his skills description. Eye of Mystery level 1. Make the host immune to genjutsu and allows him to see through anything that covers reality in any way. Host can also cast a special genjutsu Land of Death where he can control time inside of it and even seal his victim's soul inside his eye and control them as he wishes inside the genjutsu. The higher the level, the stronger the effects. Incredible. This is no different than me gaining another Mangekyo Sharingan ability. This system is a terrifying cheat, but I guess it's worth it considering what I had to go through to get it. Someone else would have lost himself in the dream completely. After reaching this conclusion, Bakurio decided to be more careful in the future before he relaxed for a few days and decided to go for his third and final quest, the one for his other Sharingan ability, the Eye of Insight. To evolve this ability, Bakurio has to rely on his Eye of Insight ability to copy a very complicated action after only seeing it once. After accepting the quest, Bakurio was transported to another dimension where his attributes were reset and a shadow appeared in the air in front of him and kept moving and doing various poses, and the chakra inside and outside its body kept moving in unpredictable ways, and Bakurio had to copy both the poses and the chaotic movement of the chakra, which was a terrifying task. But how can he do that when the shadow kept moving for a whole day before vanishing? Especially in the later parts when it moved at a speed that was almost 3 times his in his current body that has all its attributes reset. However, this test was at least straightforward, and thanks to Bakurio's close combat mastery quest where he had to focus a lot on his opponent's movement. He found this one quite similar and he was able to finish it in no more than a month. Congratulations host, your ability has evolved. Eye of Insight level 100. Eye of Enlightenment level 1. Bakurio's eyes were ignited by another illusory flame for a while before it disappeared and he felt his vision had become clearer like never before and he could see the details of anything to a terrifying degree. Finally, muttered Bakurio while letting out a sigh as he checked on the details of his newly obtained skill. Eye of Enlightenment level 1. Grants the user the ability to copy movement and energy manipulation perfectly and grants them instinctive insight on how to improve certain skills. The level of insight increases with the level of the skill. I wonder what kind of insight it gives. I have to test it after I leave this annoying room, muttered Bakurio, who now had no other way to distract himself away from his current situation. What should I do now? I can't think of any solution even after everything I went through. Heck, I even feel thankful I have this emptiness, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to resist Tsukuyomi, thought Bakurio in annoyance. Meanwhile, in the outside world, only 3 days had passed since Bakurio entered the Eternal Chamber, and Otahime couldn't help but approach the Black Tortoise Sage and ask him, do you think he can pass the trial? The Black Tortoise Sage opened his yellow eyes and his voice echoed through the hall. He will, but I don't know how he's going to do it. After all, even I can't see through that chamber. Otahime was astonished slightly hearing that Bakurio will pass the trial. I can't wait to see how that boy is going to pass the trial, she thought. She herself went through the trial after all and knew of its difficulty, but she eventually reached peace within herself, which is why she has a soothing personality. Back at the trial, Bakurio was going insane from not finding a way out of the trial, and his negativity kept accumulating until he suddenly noticed something. Wait, isn't Dark Chakra a way to control these kinds of negative emotions? What if I can turn my emptiness into power? muttered Bakurio, who was suddenly enlightened after almost losing his mind, and immediately put it to the test as he focused on transforming those negative emotions into dark chakra, and he kept doing this over and over again. Different from normal chakra, which was a combination of physical energy and spiritual energy, dark chakra was a combination of all three, in a way similar to nature's energy, and it stored itself inside his heart. The dark chakra kept accumulating since his emptiness simply felt like an abnormal abyss of negativity. However, Bakurio kept grinding at it, and his speed of transforming those negative emotions grew faster and faster as the level of his dark chakra transformation mastery kept growing bigger and bigger. But he soon felt saturated and couldn't store any more dark chakra inside his heart, so he decided to learn how to use it to spend it, and the first thing that came to his mind was the way Shino used it to break through the limits of his body. Thanks to Bakurio's knowledge of medical arts, and probably his eye of enlightenment displaying its subtle effect, he concluded that Shino was probably utilizing the principle of the muscles growing stronger after their fibers getting destroyed through training and regeneration. This is a great way to use the strong recovery and destructive characteristics of dark chakra. However, Shino used it to push himself beyond his body's natural limit, and he had to sustain it with dark chakra at all times, otherwise it would crumble, which is why he ended up in that terrible state after Mukai interrupted the flow of dark chakra in his body. But Bakurio wasn't planning to push his body beyond its natural limits. He was planning to just use it to reach the current limit of his body that grew during his 3 years inside the eternal chamber. Let's try this out, muttered Bakurio before he began destroying the fibers of his muscles with dark chakra and reconstructing them again repeatedly. It was a very painful process. Someone like Shino, who had great mastery as a doctor as well as with dark chakra and its properties, could do this almost instantly. But Bakurio had to be careful since he wasn't that experienced yet, and it took him a whole day with the use of his multitask ability just so he doesn't make any mistakes, but the results were terrifying and satisfying. He was already incredibly talented in terms of the body thanks to his Greatmaster body talent, so even his normal limit was beyond what anyone could reach in their lifetime. Right now his body was around the age of 10 years old, but after this transformation, he immediately reached 170 centimeters in height. His body was bulky, full of muscles but lean at the same time, not compromising on any agility, and Bakurio was shocked when he opened the stats window. Attributes, STRAGI 5 EITSTASPI, 700 700, 700, 400, 1000, 1800. The biggest increase was in his spirit thanks to all the experiences he went through, but the increase in his body was no joke as well. It was terrifying to say the least, and he was around the level of a medium cage in terms of body power. Nice, I can push myself further, but I don't want to become reliant on dark energy for now. Let's keep going, muttered Bakurio, who was feeling the power coursing through his body and began transforming his negative emotions into dark chakra and used it to create all kinds of jutsu. His best creation was to incorporate dark chakra into the Rasengan, creating a destructive jutsu that was second to power only to his dark touch Juinjutsu, and he kept spamming this jutsu inside the eternal chamber while creating dark chakra at the same time for a whole month. It was a vicious cycle as he quickly grew bored of this training, creating more negativity to fuel his emptiness, but at the same time, it quickly leveled up his dark transformation and his new jutsu, which he named Dark Rasengan for convenience, which first made his speed at transforming negative emotions faster, and second, the power of his Dark Rasengan surpassed all his other jutsu, and so is its destructiveness, which in turn increased its dark chakra cost and was able to reach a rate of refilling and expanding his chakra higher than his creation of negativity. And once both his dark chakra transformation and Dark Rasengan reached level 100, he was finally able to reach his goal, and he could feel his heart getting lighter and lighter every day, and after 1 month, he finally expanded all of his negativity. But there was still a trace of his emptiness that was giving birth to negativity inside his heart, so he used his Hijikaninki to forcefully block it. Although he didn't feel like he could erase it since it was a weird part of him, as if it was a part of his very soul, and his instincts warned him against destroying it, but freezing it worked just fine since it was weakened now and didn't consume much of his eye power, which was something Bakurio was reluctant to use. After staying like that for a few seconds, feeling delighted inside his heart, a door finally appeared in one of the walls of the eternal chamber, signifying Bakurio's success in passing the trial and the end of this annoying test. Finally, muttered Bakurio as he exited the eternal chamber and was surprised to find Otahime waiting for him outside while carrying a basket full of food in her hand. You actually passed the test already. Otahime had a shocked look on her face. After all, she knew how difficult this test could be, and she herself spent more than 50 years inside the eternal chamber before she was able to pass it and was considered a genius for it. A time, she was able to expand thanks to her being a long-living tortoise. It took too long. Why are you saying it as if it was quick? Asked Bakurio, who was now taller than Otahime. Thankfully his clothes still fit him just fine since they were system items and he kept his sword inside his inventory for now. It took me 50 years to pass the trial, and I'm considered a genius in the Dragon Palace. Some other members of our tribe are still stuck in the eternal chamber for hundreds of years. Said Otahime with shock still covering her face. There are other eternal chambers? Asked Bakurio, who was intrigued by this information. If they can create these chambers without the stupid trial, they could become great training grounds. However, he was disappointed when Otahime shook her head at him and said, no, there's only one eternal chamber, but it has many entrances that lead to different enclosed spaces. The one you entered is just a small part of the whole eternal chamber. I see. Can I start learning sage arts now? Asked Bakurio, and Otahime finally remembered that she was supposed to lead him to the black tortoise sage, so she smiled awkwardly and said in her soothing voice, that's right. Please follow me. How cute. Thought Bakurio before he suddenly remembered, didn't I kill her many times inside the infinite dream? Poor girl. Bakurio had a weird look as he stared at Otahime's back and she couldn't help but feel a shiver and she shot him a glare before she said, you walk in front. It's not like I'm staring at Yura. However, Bakurio couldn't finish his sentence as Otahime blushed slightly and pushed him quickly all the way to the hall where the black tortoise was still sitting just as Bakurio left him, and probably didn't leave that position for a long time. Young man, it seems like you passed the trial and even grew stronger. Congratulations, said the ancient voice, and Bakurio nodded back at him and said, how do I learn your sage arts? It's very simple, young man. You just need to enter the pond, and nature chakra will naturally begin flowing through your body, said the sage in response, and Bakurio began analyzing the pond of yellow water where the sage was sitting. Okay, said Bakurio before he started walking confidently towards the pond and directly stepped into it without hesitation right after. Huge vortexes appeared inside the pond and the same happened on his skin, as multiple swirls appeared on it before it started bulging up and threatened to transform into a carapace if he doesn't take control of that natural energy quickly. However, that didn't bother Bakurio. Instead, it was a swirl that appeared near his heart that surprised him and he felt his emotions stirring up. I see, so this is why they require the trial. It seems that this nature's chakra doesn't affect only the body but probably even the soul is affected, thought Bakurio as he focused on taking control of the natural chakra raging through his body and disturbing his emotions, and he remained unmoved like a mountain both in body and spirit. This went on for a whole day before all the swirls stabilized on Bakurio's skin and he opened his eyes that turned yellow just like that of the black tortoise sage and Otahime, and he couldn't help but feel as if he was reborn as his spirit felt stronger than ever before. Congratulations, host. You learned Tortoise Sage Arts, Tortoise Sage Art Level 1. Plus 20 to physical attribute. Finally, I'm done with this Dragon Palace. I never expected to spend so much time in this place, muttered Bakurio as he slowly exited the pond and couldn't wait to leave this place. What kind of talent is this, to actually learn our sage arts from the first try and in just one day? The black tortoise sage was astonished despite knowing of Bakurio's capability to learn their sage arts. Well, thanks for your hospitality. I will be taking my leave now, said Bakurio, and the sage nodded at him, but he suddenly said, be careful, kid, what you seek is far beyond your power. Bakurio shot the black tortoise sage a calm look, trying to understand the meaning behind this warning before he shook his head and said, I will eventually become strong enough. Then, he turned his head, unaware of the sage shaking his head in disappointment. Meanwhile, Bakurio followed after Otahime out of the Dragon Palace and waited for her as she called for Ningame to help reverse summon him back to Konoha. Is he already done with the training? Said Ningame with a shocked look on his face to the frowning Otahime, who nodded back in response. Her worldviews were destroyed by Bakurio, and yet the sage still felt that he wasn't sufficient to face the incoming darkness, which brought a heavy feeling to her heart, and Yuki easily noticed that feeling but didn't say anything. Amazing brat, make sure to make good use of our sage arts and don't use them for evil, or I will make sure to punish you, said Ningame with a serious look on his tortoise face, which brought a smile to Bakurio as he responded. Hi. Satisfied with how Bakurio was listening to his words, Ningame happily took him back to Konoha straight to Guy's location. Ningame, what are you doing here? Asked Guy, who was startled by the sudden appearance of Ningame, but when the dust settled, his eyes widened in disbelief as he stared at the young man beside Ningame. He had blood-red eyes with 3 tomo inside that had a special intricate design deep inside of them, different from a normal Sharingan that could only be noticed by a careful observer. His hair was long and his eyebrows sharp and had an evil charm to his face. His body was not overly muscular but appeared full of explosive strength, and his hair was long and straight, reaching all the way to his lower back despite being tied into a loose ponytail, but he still had a bang that fell by the right side of his face. This is. Guy was shocked at Bakurio's appearance, while Ningame simply snorted at Guy and said, you humans have low lifespans, so it's only normal for the boy to grow up quickly after the 3 years he spent inside the Eternal Chamber. 3 years. Guy's heart shook slightly, but Bakurio soon greeted him and said, Yo Guy, what's this face all about? And here I was expecting to be baptized by the power of youth. Guy quickly regained his cool and thought, I have to ask Ningame later about what kind of trial Bakurio went through. Before he said with a thumbs up, Bakurio, you seem to have gotten stronger. Wanna test out your current strength with me? Sure, replied Bakurio with a smile as he observed that they were in a training ground and having a spar with a normal human after all this time wouldn't hurt. Get ready, said Guy as he rushed at Bakurio and started exchanging punches and kicks with him, but soon Bakurio landed a kick on him that sent him flying through the air. You better be serious, I'm way stronger than before, said Bakurio with a smile, and he only received a grin from Guy as the latter took off his weights and said, Good. I shall fight seriously today. Bakurio grinned back at him and watched as Guy began activating the gates one by one all the way to the 5th gate. This is going to be exciting, thought Bakurio as Guy instantly rushed at him with a terrifying speed that wreaked havoc on the training ground, but Bakurio still calmly negated all of his attacks with his own taijutsu, using his now stronger body and better fighting mastery coupled with the gentle fist that helped him negate the terrifying pressure emitted by Guy. Guy, don't hold back, said Bakurio, startling Guy slightly before the latter smiled and said, 6th gate, the gate of view, open. The aura around Guy became even more terrifying, and the sheer force of it created huge waves of air that threatened to uproot the trees around them. This is it, said Bakurio with a grin as Guy rushed at him and said, Morning Peacock. Bakurio stood his ground and replied, 8 trigrams. 128 palms, and at the same time he used his Snake Sage transformation and they both started sending extremely fast punches that caused the very air to ignite in flames as they moved around and kept trying to land a hit on the other while moving around, creating huge destruction wherever they went. What kind of monsters are these two? Thought Ningame with a fearful look on his face as the whole training ground was on fire right now as Guy and Bakurio kept moving and attacking each other at high speed, but Bakurio eventually said, You are still holding back. Guy was already breathing heavily, but seeing how Bakurio was able to somehow react to his attack despite being slightly faster than him in terms of speed, he suddenly said, You are truly a worthy opponent, be careful now, I'm going to get serious. Bakurio nodded and watched as Guy took a horse stance, and a terrifying power even bigger than before started gushing out of his body that caused the ground to cave in, a huge area around him. 7th gate, the gate of wonder, open. Guy had a new blue smoke-like aura surrounding his body, then he instantly disappeared and reappeared in front of Bakurio, sending a terrifying punch at his stomach. Both his speed and strength increased dramatically once more, he thought, while noticing how the air was being compressed to a terrifying degree and Bakurio was hit by it before the punch even connected. Yelled Bakurio as he used all of his chakra to increase his speed and barely dodged Guy's punch while counterattacking at the same time and using his future sight and true fighter mastery to their fullest capabilities. This went on for a while until the both of them were completely exhausted and they fell to the floor while breathing heavily. Damn Guy, you are truly terrifying, said Bakurio with a smile, satisfied by the result of this fight since he only used his taijutsu and Snake Sage to fight Guy and nothing else. No, you are the terrifying one, Bakurio-kun, You are still young, I can't imagine how strong you will get once you grow up. Ouch, said Guy while holding his right hand that probably had one of its muscles ruptures, but Bakurio calmly used his restoration skill on Guy and his wounds started to magically heal slowly to his surprise and he was soon able to sit back on his feet. Don't sell yourself short. You are also talented, it's just that the way you used to train your body is inefficient and doesn't allow you to fulfill your full potential, said Bakurio with a sigh. What do you mean? Asked Guy curiously and Bakurio decided to explain to this friend of his how it's impossible to train all of his muscles with just simple training exercises like push-ups and squats even if he uses weights. Guy, the human body has more than 600 muscles. Do you think your training regime can train all of them to perfection and allow you to reach the limit of your body's potential? Asked Bakurio, and Guy couldn't help but sit cross-legged with his hand on his chin and said, it doesn't seem possible. Indeed, but I found a way to solve this problem. Want to get stronger? Said Bakurio with a grin, and Guy's face suddenly lit up as he immediately stood up and gave Bakurio a bow and said humbly, please teach me. What a guy. Thought Bakurio with a warm smile on his face. Listen Guy, the way muscles grow stronger is by. Bakurio explained to Guy how muscles grow stronger through the effect of physical training. I do know about this, but it's not easy to replicate the effect of training with chakra, said Guy because this was already something he and other people considered before, to use chakra to directly strengthen the body but it eventually failed or at least wasn't effective enough. And he was right since recovery aside, the way to destroy the fibers without harming the muscles in a way that replicates training wasn't an easy thing to do with normal chakra requiring huge mastery of controlling chakra which not anyone could achieve especially taijutsu users aren't known for it. And, even if you could, it wouldn't be with the same precision and effectiveness that dark chakra has since you will have to do each muscle individually, and considering there were more than 600 muscles, the effectiveness of training becomes better. This is because normal chakra can affect the body, but the user can only channel it through chakra channels or out of their tenketsu. So, they can't make it flow through the fibers of their muscles directly to destroy it and has to use more complicated ways. Dark chakra however doesn't use the normal chakra channels and can flow unhindered throughout the body. Plus having destructive and regenerative abilities makes it perfect for this kind of use. However, this procedure requires perfect knowledge of the body in question as well as huge amounts of dark chakra that could only be accumulated from torturing at least 10 people for a few months. However, Bakurio didn't have this kind of problem since his body was automatically converting his negativity into dark chakra and he was almost full again. Not to mention that he could always use Jikaninki to produce it into other people and absorb it so he only need to understand a person's body structure. Don't worry, I have a way to help you reach your full potential, although I will need to study your body's structure in detail for a while. Said Bakurio and Guy easily agreed not minding at all. No problem. This was a great show of trust from Guy since he was basically opening himself to Bakurio completely. Good, I will be staying in Konoha for a while until I receive a response from Kakashi so we can take our time doing this. Guy nodded at him before they both left to do their own things. Bakurio went home, and after knocking for a while, a feminine voice came from the door. Coming. It was early morning so Naruto and Sasuke should be at school, thought Bakurio as he waited for the door to open. And soon a red-haired woman opened the door curiously and said, "How can I help you?" But she suddenly paused as she kept observing the young man in front of her with a weird look in her eyes before it turned into absolute shock. Is everything okay? Are you amazed by how handsome I look? Said Bakurio with a smile bringing Kushina out of her shock as she said to Bakurio, what kind of transformation jutsu is this? It's actually so perfect I can't see through it, said Kushina while staring curiously at Bakurio who was even taller than her right now and she didn't consider at all the possibility that he was 3 years older. Hearing the commotion, Minato suddenly came out from the kitchen where he was washing the breakfast dishes and his blue eyes couldn't help but freeze in shock when he saw Bakurio's appearance. What happened to you Bakurio-kun? Minato wasn't delusional like Kushina and immediately understood that no transformation can be so perfect especially when he was feeling a terrifying pressure coming from Bakurio that couldn't be faked. Well, I had to go through quite the annoying trial. Bakurio explained to Kushina and Minato who had shocked looks on their faces and the former even hugged Bakurio with tears in her eyes feeling sorry for all the loneliness he had to endure. And a little fox suddenly woke up from his slumber and jumped at Bakurio and landed on his shoulder while admonishing him with the couple. Meanwhile, as Bakurio was reuniting with his friends after 3 years, that was only 3 days for them. In a completely dark dimension, a soul was calmly floating, its eyes closed. It was the soul of a pale-skinned woman with delicate facial features. She had extremely long, sweeping white hair, even longer than her body, and her fingernails were long and dark. Her eyebrows were cut very short and round, a symbol of nobility, and she wore a red shade of lipstick on her lips. Most noticeable of all, she had 2 brown horns that stuck out from her head and a slit at the center of her forehead. She wore a high-collared hime kimono which has tomo running down the center and edges of the gown adorned with intricate gold and purple lines. This was the dormant soul of Kagaya Otsutsuki, who was sealed more than 1,000 years ago by her 2 sons Hagoromo and Hamura. Depraved of all her power, her body slowly degraded until only her strong soul remained. But taking the loneliness of imprisonment wasn't easy, and even her soul risked dispersing if she remained awake, so she entered a dormant state to save her energy and retain the last bits of her sanity. However, she suddenly felt a tug at her soul and her eyes opened slightly, showing pure white eyes, an indication of her Byakugan, and she stared absent-mindedly into space as she imagined herself in a completely white room, and somehow she had her peak strength. In that room, there was only a boy that looked around 11 or 12 years old with a huge aura of negativity surrounding him, an aura she knew very well. It was emptiness. But she was surprised because the boy had Sharingans. Is this boy a descendant of Hagoromo? How come I was summoned here? She thought in that vision. The boy stared at her calmly and without her control. Her phantom-like self used Tsukuyomi on him, and the boy's eyes soon lost their focus as they closed and he remained motionless there. This boy is gone. What a pity, I wanted to talk to him and understand the current situation of the world. Thought Kagaya, as her illusory body slowly started fading, although it wasn't a quick process, and she watched how the trapped boy kept struggling to escape from the dream. This went on for a month, and she found it interesting. At least more than her years of imprisonment that only had emptiness and darkness around her. However, even at the last seconds of her disappearing, the kid didn't show any strong signs of waking up, although she was happy for him since the air of negativity around him was gone thanks to the effect of her Tsukuyomi. However, it suddenly came back. Despite her Tsukuyomi, that emptiness eventually came back, and she noticed that the boy was struggling even harder than before. After going back to her darkness, Kagaya couldn't help but wonder, just what kind of life did he lead for him to have that kind of emptiness? Maybe he would succeed in leaving my Tsukuyomi eventually. She thought, and a faint smile appeared on her face, something she didn't have in a long time, but it quickly turned into a sad one before she closed her eyes with a lonely look in them. Back at Konoha, Bakurio didn't realize that the illusion he summoned actually contained Kagaya's consciousness, and currently he was being scolded by Kushina, who got mad at him for being reckless once more. While Kurama kept bragging about how he went through worse than this, and 3 years in isolation was just a vacation for him, Bakurio-kun, we need to have a talk, said Minato with a faint smile on his face, but he had a cold look on his eyes that made Bakurio's spine tingle slightly. This guy has grown stronger as well, thought Bakurio before he nodded at Minato and said, sure, I decided, you aren't allowed to leave Konoha anymore until I say so, said Kushina with hair flying in the air in anger, and Bakurio only smiled awkwardly at her and nodded. Although his heart was feeling nothing but warmth since he could feel their love for him and how much it pained them to see him lose his childhood like this. In a secluded location near Konoha, 2 people suddenly appeared. They were Bakurio and Minato, and they reached this place thanks to the latter's flying thunder god jutsu. So, what did you want to ask me about, Minato? Asked Bakurio casually, and Minato frowned slightly before he said, this transformation is impossible to achieve even if you intensively trained for a few years. Guy is the best example of that, so how did you achieve such a transformation? Bakurio let out a sigh and said, I'm sure you already have the answer, so why ask? Minato's gaze flickered slightly before he said worriedly, Bakurio-kun, you are playing with fire. Minato indeed already sensed the familiar presence of dark chakra coming from Bakurio, and staring at his terrifying muscular body, it immediately reminded him of Shino. I know what you are worried about, but don't worry. Unlike Shino's transformation, which was relying on dark chakra to keep itself held together far beyond the limits of what his body could have ever achieved. My own transformation is just me training to the limits of my body and I don't have to sustain it with dark chakra at all, replied Bakurio with a reassuring smile, but to his surprise, Minato still shook his head and said, "This isn't all that I'm worried about. I'm sure you remember the dark presence we felt when Shino suddenly died. I don't want you to fall prey to that presence like the doctor." Bakurio narrowed his eyes slightly before he shook his head. "I know. Which is why I'm trying to grow stronger as soon as possible, otherwise that being will keep looming over our heads from the darkness without us noticing him at all." Minato agreed with this reluctantly and Bakurio suddenly told him, "I'm waiting for something from Orochimaru's side before I make my move. You should be prepared at that point for what we are going to face, that's all we can do." Minato nodded at this and kept his thoughts to himself as he teleported the two of them back to Konoha. "I just hope my plan would work," thought Bakurio with an uncertain look on his face. It was truly annoying to have to face this kind of enemy that remains hidden in the dark, so Bakurio was planning to forcefully drag it into the light. The next few days, Bakurio spent them peacefully inside of Konoha, and other than meeting Guy and Mukai to discuss the Eight Gates release with them and study their body's structure thoroughly with his Byakugan, the rest of the time was spent training his true fighter mastery and swift sword style as well as his affinities and trying to finish some of his other quests. He also made sure to keep an eye on the situation of the world. This went on for a whole month. He was training Naruto and Sasuke with a clone while he was trying to complete raising the rest of his affinities to level 100 and they weren't far from reaching that level. Eventually, he succeeded and got all his affinities to level 100 and a notification instantly appeared in front of him: Quest Master of the Elements. Reach level 100 in all 7 basic affinities transformation. Reward: 10,000 points, 1 Affinity Enhancement Token. Affinity Enhancement Token allows the host to transform one of his level 100 affinities into a superior form. Ps. This token can only be used once and the decision cannot be changed even if the host goes back in time. Bakurio's eyes widened slightly at the unexpected reward, and he couldn't help but reread the description of this token. "I was expecting to get some kind of Kekkei Genkei, but I actually received such a terrifying item instead." Bakurio was truly surprised and delighted at the same time because this was something he always theorized about. Were the Amaterasu flames that Itachi could use really just a Kekkei Genkei of the Mangekyo Sharingan, or was it something else? The same thing was the case with his ability to control death, terrifying illusions such as the Koto Amatsukami or Fugaku's ability to manipulate space. These were all weird abilities that didn't seem to be a combination of some chakra transformation. This is where the theory of a superior form of chakra transformation comes into place. "Let's see how this item affects my affinities," thought Bakurio as he tried to use it on each of his abilities and received a notification that told him to what his affinities were going to evolve if he used the token on them. Fire Transformation, Blaze Transformation, Amaterasu Flames, Earth Transformation, Rumble Transformation, allows the user to create tremors that could destroy both the earth and the sky itself. Wind Transformation, Sharp Transformation, allows the user to conjure a sharp energy that can cut through anything. Lightning Transformation, Smite Transformation, allows the user to conjure red lightning that has very destructive and penetrative characteristics. Water Transformation, Drown Transformation, allows the user to conjure an extremely dense and heavy water that could march with an unstoppable momentum. Yin Transformation, Reality Transformation, allows the user to manipulate the immaterial and turn it material. Yang Transformation, Life Transformation, grants the user the ability to manipulate the essence of life. Dark Transformation, Evil Transformation, grants the user the ability to manipulate evil energies as well as blood and souls to a minor degree. This is amazing. I honestly can't make up my mind at all. All of these transformations are amazing in their own way, thought Bakurio while staring at the description of each transformation. I will probably find a way to evolve them in the future, and considering my fighting style and my recently acquired sword, it would probably be best if I chose the Sharp Transformation, thought Bakurio while analyzing all of his skills before he used the token without any hesitation. Congratulations host, your Wind Transformation level 100 advanced into Sharp Transformation level 1 Ps. You can still use all of your wind-related abilities without any problems. Bakurio felt knowledge rushing into his mind and instantly understood the basic principles of how to use this sharp energy and immediately wanted to put it to the test, so he went to a secluded training ground and used it right away. A white light gathered on the tip of his finger resembling flowing wind, Then he slashed it at a nearby tree and it immediately was cut in two, but the slash kept going and cut 10 more trees before it penetrated slightly into a rock where it stopped. Bakurio's jaw almost dropped to the floor as he stared at this scene. This is at least 10 times stronger than wind transformation. How great, he thought, satisfied by this new power he gained before he turned his attention to the system with narrowed eyes and thought. It's unfortunate that THS seems like the rest of my quests. Once you accept the reward, it doesn't matter if I use save and load ability, my quests are automatically accepted, and the rewards don't change, and in this case, it seems like the token works in the same. Bakurio had a disappointed look on his face since he was tempted to use it multiple times but it instantly disappeared as he muttered, "It's fine, now I have the basics of how these advanced transformations are created. In time, I will master the rest of the transformations as well," muttered Bakurio with a confident look on his face before he suddenly felt one of his clones that were training Naruto and Sasuke had disappeared, and it returned to him with the news that the dogs he contacted through Pakun has finally made their decision. His request was accepted, but not without conditions. Let's see what these dogs are planning, thought Bakurio before. He disappeared instantly from his spot, curious about what the dogs wanted. As Bakurio approached Kakashi's house with him, he sensed the presence of his summoned Pakun as well as that of two other beings he didn't recognize. These two are no less strong than Gamabunta and Manda, and they seem to be hiding their aura, thought Bakurio as he approached the house. Meanwhile, inside the house, two dogs were sitting on the floor silently with their noses twitching slightly as they sensed Bakurio's arrival. They both seemed like dogs of Samoyed breed. They were very beautiful, although one of them had snow-white unblemished fur while the other had pitch-black fur and a scar on his right eye. Something to note was that they both had weird red markings on their noses and ears as well as on the contours of their eyes, but other than that, they seemed like completely normal dogs. "The kid with that brat Kakashi is dangerous," said the black dog with a manly voice and a sharp look in his eyes while the white one had a gentle look as she replied with a feminine voice. "Indeed, he also has a weird aura around him. It smells like death." The black dog nodded in response and before long, Bakurio, who was having a talk with Kakashi about his body's transformation and his plans for Guy and Mukai suddenly came into their view and they both stood up at the same time. "Oh, I wasn't expecting to see such beautiful beings," said Bakurio with a surprised look on his face. He liked dogs in his past life, and these two just so happened to be from the same breed he used to like. "These are the two elder sages, Kuroinu and Shiroinu," said Pakun introducing the two of them to Bakurio. "Nice to meet you both," said Bakurio with a smile while staring at the two of them curiously. "So, you are the brat that dared to threaten Pakun's life. You don't look the way he described," said Kuroinu with a threatening voice while Shiroinu only stared at Bakurio serenely. "Oh, that was just a small misunderstanding. We are good buddies now, right Pakun?" said Bakurio with a smile and Pakun instantly retorted and said, "Who's your buddy?" "See, all is good between us," said Bakurio, and they couldn't help but stare at him awkwardly before Shiroinu decided to change the subject and said, "We decided to accept teaching you our sage arts along with this man Kakashi Hatake after seeing that he's talented enough and have enough fate with us, but you will have to agree to a request we have." "Oh, they actually planned to allow Kakashi to train sage arts as well. Was it's probably his personal request," thought Bakurio before he shot Kakashi a look and the latter nodded at him to answer his doubt. "Now that I think about it, with Minato learning sage arts from Jiraiya, one of his students would have probably received his teaching as well if they had the talent for it, and Kakashi's is probably the best candidate for that, although his untimely death ruined many of such developments," thought Bakurio before he turned his attention to these two dogs and asked, "What do you want in exchange?" "We want you to help us deal with some monsters and beasts that are escaping from the gate of hell," said Shiroinu, and Bakurio couldn't help but ask, "Can you first explain to me more about this gate of hell and hell in general since I'm a little bit clueless about the subject?" Kuroinu and Shiroinu shared a look before the former said, "It's a long story, one that extends far before the humans of this world could use chakra. In that era filled with wars, those who desired power, both from humans and beasts alike, all searched for the entrance of hell since it was said that anyone who could endure its aura would be granted immense strength. However, those who fails would be corroded by its power and turn into monsters with no sanity that only wants to bring disaster to this world if they are left free. So, Our sage clan took it as our duty to protect the world from those monsters we call devils, and we have been guarding that gate ever since. I see. Muttered Bakurio before Kakashi asked curiously, but how come you still have problems with these devils, if you are guarding the gate? Kurohanu stared at Kakashi before he said, there are 7 gates of hell in total, all 7 of them allows people to enter hell, but only one of them allows those monsters to leave, which is the gate we are guarding, and many humans and beasts end up entering them out of curiosity or from the temptation of its aura. Can't you just guard all the gates and solve this problem? Asked Bakurio, but this time it was Shiroinu who responded and said with a sigh, if it was that easy, our clan wouldn't be that troubled. What's the problem? Asked Kakashi, and she responded with a gentle voice, only the gate that we are guarding is stationary, the other 6 keep appearing and disappearing in random intervals and places, making it impossible to predict or guard their location long term. Although we grew accustomed to their aura and we try to find them as soon as they appear, but there are always beings that fall for the temptation of that aura. That's indeed troublesome, said Bakurio before he asked, how strong are these devils? It depends on the user's talent before they enter the gate. The more talented they were, the stronger they become as devils. Finding devils at the cage level isn't that rare. Bakurio's eyes narrowed slightly. This place is actually so dangerous. It seems that these dogs have been protecting the world for a long time in the dark from some terrible monsters. But why are they doing such a thing? Bakurio didn't want to keep contemplating this question, so he directly asked, why did your clan decide to protect the gate in the first place? The faces of both Kurohanu and Shiroinu froze slightly after hearing this question, and they seemed reluctant to respond as they only replied, our clan never breaks their promises. It seems like someone ordered them or their ancestors to guard the gate. Interesting. Who could it be? At that time, no human had chakra. Bakurio was truly curious, but he could feel that the 2 dogs in front of him wouldn't tell him the truth even if he pressed them on it, just like Pakun, so he changed the subject and said, do you guys have any trials? Yes, you will have to pass the trial of deprivation, where you will lose all of your senses for a set period of time, and you will need to fight some enemies at the same time, replied Kurohanu, and Bakurio noticed that Kakashi didn't say anything and understood that he already knew about this. That's quite hard. How do you usually pass this test? Asked Bakurio curiously, and Kurohanu replied, you will have to unlock your survival instincts. That's the only way you have to face your attackers while deprived of all your senses. Okay. Let's do it, said Bakurio, surprising Kakashi, who said, don't you need to prepare yourself? Nah, this is going to be a walk in the park, replied Bakurio confidently. If there's one thing he was proud of, it was his terrifying instincts, not to mention they were greatly enhanced after all the time he spent fighting inside the Eternal Chamber. You will first have to help us with the devils. It took us a month to weaken their assault, but they are still coming out in droves, said Shiroinu, and Bakurio nodded at her calmly before he turned to Kakashi and asked, are you coming? Kakashi let out a helpless sigh before Pakun glared at him and said, what are you sighing for? You already expected this and told Rin to delay your training sessions. Oh, Bakurio exclaimed in surprise as Kakashi smiled awkwardly while rubbing his head and said, let's go. The location Bakurio and Kakashi were taken to was out of their expectations. They thought they were going to see a place full of evil energy like a literal hell, but instead, it was a normal mountain chain with many trees and greenery, as well as weirdly shaped houses which they guessed were the living quarters of the dogs. Those houses were built randomly, some were even on top of trees, but one thing that Bakurio noticed is that all the houses were facing a particular direction, and they all seemed hurriedly built as if they were only temporary and were there just to keep an eye on something, and the target of that attention was none other than the biggest mountain of this mountain chain, or to be more precise, it was directed at a single revolving portal on the face of the huge dark mountain. Where are we? Asked Kakashi curiously, since this was his first time in a sacred ground and he could sense a special air in it which he guessed must be from the high concentration of the natural energy, and his guess wasn't wrong, although Bakurio sensed a different presence in the air which made him frown slightly. Shiroinu glimpsed at the completely black mountain chain and said, this is the Osor mountain chain, and the portal you can see at the base there is the gate of hell. Is this the temptation you were talking about? Asked Yuki as he felt a weird power similar to his Jikaninki trying to affect his emotions, and the more they approached the gate, the stronger that feeling got. Yes, we are still far from the gate, so its effect should be weak, but But if you feel like you might lose control over your emotions, please let me know so that we can quickly escort you away from it, said Shiroinu gently. Where are the devils you spoke about? Asked Kakashi after not noticing the presence of the terrifying monsters, and this time it was Kuroinu who responded and said, those devils only leave the gate at night, and the tempting effect of the gate will also increase at that time, so you should be very careful. I see, said Kakashi, who was preparing to reveal his Sharingan but then stopped after hearing this response. I don't understand. Why are you living this close to the gate? I see that you are keeping some considerable distance away from it, but aren't you afraid of losing control over your emotions? Asked Bakurio curiously, and Kuroinu responded to him arrogantly. Unlike you human, our tribe is gifted with strong resistance to handle emotional attacks, but we still keep our cubs in different locations inside the Osor mountain range. As for why we are staying this close, it's because if we don't, some of the demons would escape and we wouldn't be able to react fast enough. Although we have some formations prepared for such occasions, Bakurio nodded at Kuroinu's explanation, which only served to enhance his vigilance for what he was about to face before he stared at the sun and noticed that it was slowly setting and night would follow soon, and readied himself mentally. Surprisingly, Kakashi decided to stick around despite him being able to go to the trial directly, while saying that he was curious about these beings that could bring harm to the world, and it brought a faint smile to Bakurio's face. Meanwhile, somewhere inside of hell, a woman with two black and curvy horns coming from the sides of her head was enjoying a bath inside a pool made of black water and oozing an aura of evil and decay when she suddenly raised her head and stared into the distance. The master said to test out this kid's strength, huh? She muttered to herself as her red eyes flickered slightly and she rose from the weird pool. With a contemplative look on her face, exposing her perfect naked body. Although there was no one there to see it. She tied her long white hair into a bun before she snapped her fingers, and a red aura suddenly covered her body in a red dress. Then she snapped her fingers again and a man in butler clothing instantly appeared in front of her. He had short black hair and yellow eyes that had slits in them just like a snake, and one horn stretching from the middle of his forehead that was flickering with lightning from time to time. Uwabami, go and test the helper those dogs had brought with this time, said the mysterious woman with an apathetic tone. As you wish, your majesty, said the man referred to as Uwabami before he disappeared as silently as he appeared. Finally, something interesting is happening after all these years, muttered the woman with an intrigued look in her eyes as her gaze fell on Bakurio and Kakashi waiting beside the entrance to the gate of hell. Bakurio didn't feel that he was being watched at all, showing just how great the difference between him and this woman was, not to mention that his presence here was probably going to cause a huge disaster to these dogs. A disaster they would have never expected, since they aren't aware that this hell has a ruler and order in the first place. It wasn't long before the night fell and Bakurio seriously warned Kakashi to be careful since he's been having a weird feeling. Is there something worrying you? Asked Kakashi, and Bakurio simply shook his head and said, I have a bad feeling, that's all. The situation might change. These was Bakurio's instincts warning him, and Kakashi decided to listen to his advice and got ready for what to come. Don't worry, we've handled the situation here for centuries. Nothing will happen, brat. Stop being such a wimp, said Pakun, trying to get back at Bakurio, but the latter simply ignored him and stared warily at the portal and the clearing in front of it where the battle was going to happen. Meanwhile, inside of hell, just as night was about to fall, a terrifying army of monsters were standing in an orderly formation and ready to set out. These monsters were filled with all kind of abominations. Some had human upper parts while their lower parts were made out of an animal such as spiders, snakes, horses and whatnot. Others had human bodies with just an animal part like a scorpion's tail or bat wings. But the majority were just huge beasts with devilish features such as black scales or horns and whatnot. Then, there were two that appeared completely human, and Uwabami was standing in front of them as he looked at the troops he gathered with a demonic look in his eyes. These troops, despite being thought of as unintelligent as Bakurio was told by Kuroinu, right now they were standing in a neat formation and didn't seem to struggle to obey Uwabami's orders. The dogs were used to fighting the type with human bodies and small animal and demonic features as their strongest foes, which were already at the cage level, but they never appeared in such terrifying numbers, and now there were at least 5 of them, not to mention 3 completely human-looking ones with only demonic features. My dear brethren, under the orders of Her Highness Amatsu, we have horrors to sow, lives to reap. Let's make this a memorable day for our friend outside, said Uabami with an eerie look in his eyes, and the troops consisting of almost 200 devils immediately responded with a terrifying roar. The usual tough fight that the dogs were expecting was about to turn into a battle of life and death. Thank you for listening guys, see you in the next part.